Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome officially to the channel. This is a series where I go into various different moments in video game history, and today I want to talk about something that's gotten increasingly aggressive and personal today, but mostly was a fun time back in the day, and that's console wars. Where did these start? What consoles were involved? And what made them so popular that people almost go to war for multi-billion/billion-dollar companies selling us video game consoles? Well, sit back and hang out a bit as we go into the early console wars. Now, if you're of a certain generation, aka old like me, you likely have memories of arguing consoles on the playground or in the classroom, discussing which is better, Nintendo or Sega. Spoiler, it was Nintendo. On top of discussing your favorite titles for your system of choice, or both platforms in some cases, many of us really couldn't and still can't afford both consoles, so it was a luxury to meet somebody who could. In that case, a lot of our opportunities to play the opposing systems were at friends' houses, because, well, the internet wasn't really a thing around this time. Think 80s and 90s. I'm old, so sue me. Many of us would think, oh, this is the earliest time that this happened, around the 16-bit era. Everyone remembers the fight between Sega and Nintendo in the 90s for console dominance. The issue with this is, it's far, far from accurate. While this is likely the first time this was heavily waged towards the public, with all the heavy advertisements like Sega does what Nintendo don't, and now you're playing with power, superpower, this goes back almost to the beginning of the console itself, all the way back to the second generation of consoles. The second generation of consoles included the Fairchild Channel F, which was the first card-based console. Bally Astrocade, which most people don't remember much on because, well, even though it was a card-based console and pretty advanced, it was only actually available through mail order and had a very short run in stores, so it wasn't very predominant in the market. As a fun fact, most of you may know Bally by another name, Midway, which is what they eventually became before going under, and most of their assets going to Time Warner. The last was Atari. Yeah, I think we all know how this went. This was a more low-key affair of console war in the scheme of things, with each console trying to win based primarily off of specs and exclusives. There really wasn't any major advertisements, and this would eventually ramp into a war between Intellivision and Atari later on.
I'll try almost anything. So when Mattel Electronics asked me to compare their Intellivision games with Atari, I gave it a try. I compared Atari baseball with Intellivision, and found Intellivision played much more like real baseball. Then I compared Atari football with Intellivision. Again, Intellivision played more like the real game. In my opinion, if you try them both, there's only one conclusion you can come to. Intellivision from Mattel Electronics.
This was one of the earlier times I was able to find anyone actually using TV advertisements to tout how much better they were than the competition, with Intellivision often talking about how much better they were graphically and how they had official licenses to their sports games. That's right, they were one of the very first to license sports games, which, honestly, was pretty amazing at the time. However, shortly around this time, the video game industry would crash in the United States, leaving many of these console manufacturers getting out of the business entirely, leaving just a very few remaining. This kind of competition and trash talking wouldn't really kick into full gear again until right around the 16-bit era, when Sega wanted to take a really good hard swing at Nintendo after having failed to compete, as well as they would have liked, at least, with the Master System in the 8-bit era. It was around this time the gloves completely came off, with Sega putting out slogans like, Sega does what Nintendo don't, and now you're playing with power, superpower. Sega even came up with a mascot around this time, specifically intended to counter the Plucky Plumber in Sonic the Hedgehog. He was intentionally designed to be an edgy, cool character intended to appeal to a slightly older audience. They even marketed themselves as an older console by focusing on more mature games and bringing sports games to the modern era. This further positioned themselves as a more adult, edgy alternative to Nintendo. This didn't end with them though. It continued on with Sony and Xbox to this very day, almost getting to the point that it's gone from a friendly schoolyard argument to something far more serious. However, what do you guys think of console wars? Did any of you pick a side on any of them when you were younger, or were you mostly a merc who played both sides? What was your favorite time for this kind of thing, or is it all so much nonsense? Let me know in the comments. And while you're there, if you don't mind, leave this video a like. And if you haven't, consider subscribing. That helps me out a ton. For now, though, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. And until we meet again, happy gaming.